my lifetime, and then we got together and talked about everything it would take to go from where we are today to, Starship being operational. And there's things we need to do. We need new spacesuits. If we're going to have hundreds, thousands of people in space someday, they're going to probably need to leave the safety of their vehicle or habitat to explore or build or repair. And the $400 million 40-year-old spacesuits today probably aren't going to cut it. So let's build those and test them in an EVA. Let's go farther than anyone's gone in the last 50 years. Let's leverage new communication technology like Starlink over lasers, because the handful of ground stations and TDRS satellites now aren't very young, and they're heavily taxed. So that got me excited. It was different than Inspiration 4, which showed that it could be done, to something that was really developmental, to build and do things that hadn't been done before. And how could you not want to be part of it?
Can you talk about maybe some of the key objectives and something that you admire about Elon? Can you talk about some of the key objectives about this mission and how it differs from Inspiration 4?
Yeah. So, this is, as I mentioned before. We have 3 primary objectives. First, it'll be a new altitude record, the highest anyone's flown in Earth orbit. So we aim to go to 1,400 kilometers, which is inside the inner portion of the Van Allen radiation belt. And there's a couple things for that. One, there's a lot of science and research experiments. Well, first, you're not getting to the moon or Mars unless you fly through the Van Allen belts. And we've only done that a handful of times, and it was more than 50 years ago. So if we get to Mars, we'd love it if people are able to come back alive and talk about it. And so I think there's a lot we stand to gain from that. Vehicle architecture, you can make vehicles very hardened for radiation. That comes at a mass penalty, where you can take approach like Dragon with triple redundant architecture and rely on redundancies to make your way through it. So we'll learn from that. Again, learn on the science and research side, and then we'll get out of that environment, because our 7 orbits, in the Van Allen radiation belt, and predominantly the one that goes through the South Atlantic anomaly, is a 3-month radiation equivalent on the space station. So you don't want to be there long. You want to get back down, and then we'll move on to the next phase, which is our EVA. So we'll vent the vehicle down to vacuum. So all 4 of us will be pressurized in our suits. 2 of us will go outside the vehicle. We'll learn as much as we can about the suits and operations, and then we'll go back inside, pressurize it, and bring that data home to inform the next iteration of the suits. We'll test out Starlink over laser communication. And again, this is really important. When Inspiration 4 flew, it was the first time humans were in space in the history of human spaceflight, and they weren't the top priority from a national asset perspective. So we had about 80% comm coverage. And it makes sense, because the International Space Station and the astronauts on there should be the top priority. And it wasn't a big deal at all. We knew about it, and we were super well trained, but that was only 14 people in orbit at one time. And a single Starship could potentially put 100 people in orbit, and they've got 2 factories making lots of Starships. So we're going to need other communication infrastructure besides the ground stations and TDRS satellites. So I think that's what we aim to demonstrate with the Starlink test. I think it'll be, we'll use that as an opportunity to send, I hope, a worthwhile message back home. And then we have 5 days of science and research to get through.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you're having to either prepare for or tackle and work through as you guys have prepared for this over the past months and even in the coming weeks?
I think the suits were probably, everything that goes into making a mission like Polaris Dawn possible takes an army of engineers at SpaceX. There are so many engineering challenges. Even communicating over laser links. The awesome footage we saw of Starship leveraging Starlink is using its traditional communication method. We'll aim to do it over laser links, which, if you have 2 objects going 17,500 miles an hour communicating over a beam of light, even a small thruster firing from a Dragon can break those links. So that's an engineering challenge in its own right. It's certainly not just hitting the on button on the router. But I think building the spacesuits, there's a reason why we haven't had new suits in 40 years and why they're so expensive. What looks like a piece of clothing becomes very rigid the moment it's pressurized, and it is your mini spaceship at that point. And everything between you and the vacuum of space. So SpaceX had to do a lot of work over the last 2 years, which is lightning fast, to build an EVA suit. You know, it's got to have redundant life support capabilities, protection from micrometeorites, radiation, the sun's glare. It's got to be mobile. You got to be able to use your fingers, which is very hard. The joints in it, you know, you're breathing 100% oxygen, so there's ESD and fire considerations. There's avionics running through it. It's a lot of work, and the team has just done an awesome job. We're really thrilled to be able to demonstrate it.
Can we talk about maybe any lessons learned from Inspiration 4 and how you're applying those to the Polaris?
Lessons learned from Inspiration 4. I mean, we tried to follow a similar playbook. All the ways we supplemented training. I think just knowing that, you know, having kind of been there, it's you have a plan. I think this is like the Mike Tyson until you get punched in the face thing. And there's no perfect mission, right? Especially when you know that the odds say 50% of the crew members are going to have, you know, space adaptation syndrome. And that was exactly the case with us too. And when you do, your timeline, which is planned down to the minute, goes to hell. And it means, you know, everybody is kind of a utility player. They're picking up their work plus others. And so I think, like, just knowing that that's how the odds played out on Inspiration 4, preparing for it, that it'll likely be the case with us, and we still have to get through everything, is just a consideration. And like I said, we planned for it. So.
What would you say long-term, what's the long-term vision for Polaris program, and how does that fit into the broader goals of human space exploration?
Well, look, I mean, Starship is the future for human space exploration. I mean, you know, a fully reusable launch vehicle, rapidly reusable, with 2 factories, they'll probably make more, cranking these things out. I mean, this is what truly alters humankind's trajectory. This is what allows us to conquer low Earth orbit and experiment, you know, to figure out what that space economy is, so we even know why we need lots of people in space, because it sounds great, but it does come with risk, and we already learned that half the people get sick. So what is the reason we need lots of people up there? We haven't figured out that space economy, whether it's a new form of energy or 3D printing organs or asteroid mining or something of that effect. So we need starships and the low cost associated with them to even just figure that out and figure out what that space economy is. But it's going to return us to the moon. It's going to take us to Mars. It's going to allow us to explore our solar system and maybe someday, you know, unlock the, you know, the mysteries of our universe, figure out the answers to questions we've been thinking about for some time. So Starship changes everything. It's an unbelievable endeavor. It's still, to me, unfathomable that it's like essentially a privately funded endeavor. I mean, you know, the other side of the argument out there about the subsidies is just insane. The government's paying a service. This is a privately funded endeavor to change humankind's trajectory. And we are lucky as hell that our last mission gets to be the first crewed flight of Starship. So, I mean, to me, Polaris is going to test a lot of things along the way. It's going to, when we're done with this program, we'll have lots of awesome spacesuits out there. They'll be low cost. They can make thousands of them, and you'll have the 737 of human spaceflight, you know, proven with the crew, which will be Starship.
How would you say, you know, I think we can end with this. How would you say, how, you know, I think a lot of times things can get overlooked. What do you like, and more importantly, not everyone's talking about, I mean, the fact that you're literally flying jets over Starbase when the Starship launch is happening, you know, our government's not doing that. I mean, the fact that you're giving the nod, like, what do you want people to, like, why does the general public need to be aware of the Polaris program and what you guys are doing?
Oh, Polaris program, we're just lucky to be here. I'm happy to be here. Like, we get to be a fly on the wall for all the history that SpaceX is making around us. So, yeah, I think that what we try and contribute to the broader SpaceX vision is really pale in comparison to the bigger goal, which is there will be armadas of Starship someday. They will be very low cost. and they will finally make us a true spacefaring civilization. And who knows what we stand to learn along the way. So, look, the tension is rightfully should be with the SpaceX team and the thousands of people there, like I said, that have this chain reaction of awesomeness. And yeah, we're just lucky to have front row seats.
So, thank you, Jared, for coming. Thank you to tomorrow's program, for making today happen, for being here in person. Could you just stand, Jared, you and Kelvin, I'm going to take a photo on top of here of just you and the audience right here. But yeah, if you guys could all stand.